I'm Deathsie, and I stream 2,000 hours of draft a year on Twitch. So today, Wizards have asked me back to talk all about one of the best Magic the Gathering modes, and of course, it is my specialty, drafting. Drafting has been my absolute favorite mode of Magic since I started playing around a decade ago, around the original Innistrad, and I've been hopelessly addicted to it since, and let me tell you why. Drafting is a format where everyone starts on an even playing field and fights it out in a battle royale variant of card games. Each player starts with only 3 packs and picks cards one by one until all of the cards are gone. Then, you add to those whatever basic lands you need, and voila, you're ready to go. It's very sweet, it's very simple, and it's very fair in the sense that everyone starts on an even playing field with only your skill and wit to your advantage. Maybe you haven't played Magic in a while and you don't feel like building a completely new deck from scratch to play. So with drafting, you don't need any of that. You already have everything that you need. Let me show you how to jump into a draft on Magic Arena. Now, before we begin the draft, one of the points that I want to stress starting out as a new drafter is don't worry too much about what is right or wrong. Draft is as much about expression as much as it is about competition. So I recommend to draft what you like, draft what you want to play. If you have an idea but you're uncertain about how it's going to work out, see if you can make something out of it. There are essentially no rules apart from picking cards and making a deck. All right, let's go. So you can click on this button on the top right to change the deck layout if you need to read the cards a little bit better. And so in the beginning of a draft, you want to see which cards seem interesting to you and pick those. So for the first few picks, don't worry too much about your colors, since as a pack gets passed around the table, you're going to get less good stuff as the packs go on. So you want to be picking up cards that are powerful first, and then finding out your colors later. So the context of a pack, every single pack is going to have one rare slot in the upper left here. So here we have Stronghold Arena, followed by 3 uncommons, 1, 2, 3, and then we're followed by 10 commons. So every single pack is going to be like that. And essentially, I think you want to try to pick higher rarity cards first if possible. I like to do a 1, 2, 3 system, so I like to rank the cards 1, 2, 3. These are the 3 cards that I really like, and I think that these cards are going to make my deck the most fun or powerful, and hopefully a combination of both. So I think that's a pretty cool pick. This is one of the strongest cards in the set, but again, you really would just want to play whatever you like. Dominaria United is a very interesting format. I think that there's a lot of different routes you can take. You have multicolor options. You can play anything from 2 to 5 color decks. You can play single color decks. You can play 2 color decks. So there's a lot of flexibility here. So I am going to pick Tadiova. Tadiova, I think from this pack, I like 1, and then Mary's Outrider 2, and then Captain's Call 3. All right, so next card here. Again, we're not worrying too much about the colors at the moment. We'll see exactly what we're looking for here. I think I'm just going to pick up this Sky Knight. I think the Sky Knight is pretty powerful. We might have like a little token theme going on. It's really just going to depend on what else we see. So this pack, let's take a look at this pack here. There are a lot of green cards, and we do have one powerful green card. We have Tadiova. Tadiova is essentially if you have 7 or more lands, every land you play becomes a 3/3 elemental with haste and flying. So pretty powerful effect. It mitigates the sort of downside of drawing lands later on in the game when you already have enough mana to cast everything. I think the pick that we're going to make here, I mean, I don't even think this pack is between any cards. I like Shielded Wall Sentinel, so this is going to be a card that finds this Wingmantle Chaplain and also gives us an extra bird. So that seems pretty powerful, seems like the best thing that we can do at the moment. Now, from this pack, we see that there are 2 uncommons left in the top left here. I don't think that either of these uncommons are particularly powerful. We have Urg, Spawn of Turg. This sort of slow card, being able to sacrifice your lands, putting them in your graveyard and making this guy bigger. I don't think that that's essentially what we're looking for here. This pack is essentially between Sojourner and I think maybe Phalanx. This Phalanx here. I think I'm just going to take Sojourner. Really, all I'm doing right now is picking cards that I like, and we're going to figure out how to put it all together afterwards. All right, so we have the rare left here. This is the rare that we actually opened in our starting pack as well. So this rare is I think this rare is cool. You do have to build around it a little bit. Essentially, it's gonna give you cards at the cost of life whenever one of your creatures connects with your opponent. Overall, I think the pack is not that exciting. There's not really anything I want to play. So let's just go ahead and take the rare here and see what we can do. So once again, the set is focused around domain. And the domain does want us to have a lot of different basic types of lands. So I am going to pick up one of these lands here. Again, these lands have two different basic land types on it. So, for example, forest and plains, it'll discount Yavimaya Sojourner by 2, right? And that's its domain effect. The reason I'm picking Radiant Grove is we also have some white cards here. So let's see exactly how it works. Once again, we are doing a best of one draft, so there is no sideboarding in best of one, which means that you can be a little bit more open. You can take a while to figure out what exactly you want to play. So I think that we're in a fine spot here. Let's go and pick up another land for the reason that I mentioned earlier. I don't think any of these other cards are particularly powerful. Gaia's Might is actually pretty cool. 1 mana, domain, target creature gets +1/+1 until end of turn for each basic land types among lands you control. So this oftentimes can be a 1 mana +5/+5 in the right deck. I think we are not quite there yet. So let's just go ahead and pick up the land. We might be playing an assortment of colors. So, very interesting. From our initial pack, Stronghold Arena came back. So, we could have access to double Stronghold Arena because we picked up another one here. Clockwork Drawbridge is also interesting for our defender stuff. So, there's a little bit of synergy there. I think I'm just going to take the second Stronghold Arena. Seems pretty powerful if we can be some sort of black based attacking deck, and maybe we can have a deck that is somewhat lower value, so a lot of cheap stuff, and just drawing cards off of this so that we also don't take too much damage, because the card that we reveal deals damage to us equal to its mana value. Right, so let's take this Writhing Necromancer here. Not much we really care about here. So maybe if we're playing a bunch of small things with Stronghold Arena, we might want a Vanquisher's Axe. This is an equipment card. It allows you to make one of your small things bigger, and you can move it around even if your creature dies. Generally not a powerful card, but again, as the packs get later, we are going to have less things that we're excited about. That is the nature of draft. So once again, we're trying to pick up the most powerful things early on and then kind of figure it out here. All right. So now we're going to be opening up a second pack. All right. So this is a second pack here. We have opened Solkanar the Tainted. It's 5 mana, 5/5, and it has a lot of powerful abilities. But the idea is that hopefully by the time the final ability resolves, that you will have won the game. I think I'm just going to take it. Other cards that are reasonable here, Knight of Dust Shadow works pretty well with our Stronghold Arenas because it has Menace. But as you can see, the drafts are pretty fast paced. You have to make a pretty quick decision, which is why I would generally prefer like if you're a beginning player, I think it's smarter to try your hand at the quick drafts first, so you can have time to read everything and get acquainted with what the cards do. So we have a rare here, Defiler of Dreams. This card really wants us to be blue. 5 mana, 4/3 flying, and then basically whenever we cast blue permanent spells, we get a draw card. Pretty powerful, but I think at this moment, it's not really what we're looking for. I have some blue cards, but I think it's pretty far away from what we are. Let's just go ahead and take a land here. I think a land, it's quite possible that we can just play everything here and see exactly where it takes us. All right, all 3 of the uncommons are still left in the top left of the pack. There is also a potential for us to maybe play a deck that is a combination of multiple strategies. So we did pick up the Wingmantle Chaplain earlier, so we have some incentive to pick up defenders. So maybe it's possible that we can be like a 5-color deck that's utilizing Domain, which once again, it helps that we're 5 colors because then we have access to basic land types, but also a defender deck. So I think that it might be possible to mix and match. So let's go ahead and pick up Shielded Wall Sentinel and see what happens. Maybe this Clockwork Drawbridge can come back around if we're lucky. and that'll give us some more defenders to utilize our Wing Mantle Chaplain, which I believe is one of the best cards of the set, if not the best non-rare card. All right, so this pack here, we have a rare, the Rand Portal. It is essentially a land that deals damage to us. I don't think we're particularly interested in that. That's there for constructed. And if you want, at any point in a draft, you could just pick it up for your collection. We like to call that rare drafting. I think that is something that is perfectly acceptable, especially if you're trying to get your value. So you can pick that up. I'm just going to pick up Gaia's Might. Gaia's Might, once again, if we're 5 colors, then it's going to potentially be very potent in our Magic the Gathering deck. Now, the strange thing that we have to keep in mind is that if we're trying to utilize Stronghold Arena, we are going to need creatures that are attacking. And with the Shielded Wall Sentinels that grab defenders and Wingmantle Chaplain that's a defender, we need to remember that the defenders cannot attack. So just going to keep that in mind while we're drafting. Once again, I haven't really committed to any colors so far. I think that we have a lot of powerful cards. We're just trying to see what makes sense as it all comes together. All right, we have a Floriferous Vine Wall. We can go ahead and take that. Floriferous Vine Wall is a defender. It's going to help us find land, so we are getting some sort of crossover with our different strategies. Gonna pick up the Vine Wall here. All right, here's another Clockwork Drawbridge. So Clockwork Drawbridge, once again, is going to play into that defender strategy. Let's just go ahead and pick that up. Yeah, so sometimes when you've made a pick, you can take your time to read the other cards if you're not familiar with them. A lot of these Magic cards do have a lot of text. It takes a little while to get accustomed to the cards, and I think that the speed of play in these player-based drafts are a little bit fast. So once again, I believe that the quick drafts are certainly the way to go whenever that becomes available on Magic Arena. Okay, so no defenders here, nothing that we care about. There's no land. Don't think it matters too much what we take here. Let's just pick up a Stall for Time. All right, so very similar pack to the last one. We have access to Stall for Time and Jaya's Fire NATO. 5 mana, deal 5 to start creature Planeswalker, then you get to scry 1. I think it's not that exciting, but at the same time, our deck might be lacking removal. So removal is going to be quite important in order to interact with our opponent's stuff. You can go ahead and pick it up here and see exactly if we're going to want to play that in the final build of our deck. All right, nothing much I care about here. I'm going to pick up Tolarian Tear. This card gets cheaper for instant sorcery we have. We're not really there yet, but I don't think we're really going to play anything else in this spot. You could pick up a Broken Wings. It's removal sometimes if your opponent has flying things or if they have some sort of enchantment or artifact you want to blow up. Clockwork Drawbridge. All right, let's pick up a Clockwork Drawbridge. We actually wield this one like we wanted. You can click on the change deck layout on the top right to give you an idea of what you're doing with your curve. I don't think these picks matter too much. These cards are likely not making our deck. All right, so what exactly do we have here? At the moment, we do kind of want to be red because having access to red lets us play Solkanar, and Solkanar seems pretty powerful, one of the most powerful things that we can do at the moment. We are lacking on lands in the land department, so maybe in this pack we're gonna have to pick up lands more highly in order to get to cast the cards that we draft. So you always have access to basic lands, but you don't have access to non-basic lands. These lands here are considered non-basic. So you can have, as many islands as you want. You can have as many mountains or forests as you want, but you cannot have as many of these. So you will have to pick these up in a pack if you want it. All right, Contaminated Aquifer. This is another land for us. It's not a red land. I think at the moment we're looking mainly for red and white lands. However, in this pack, there's not much that we care about. I think my pick order for this pack is probably like Aquifer 1 and then maybe Nahal 2, even though we're not that blue, followed by Gibbering Barricade 3. Go ahead and pick the Aquifer here. Errata's Firebrand. So we have a rare that does care about domain. So it does care about the amount of basic land types that we have. It's a very interesting concept for sure. However, I think that at the moment, instead of picking up another card that requires us to have more basic lands, I think it's probably better to, to have more basic land types. It's better to just have access to the basic land type. So I'm just gonna pick up the Tributary here instead of picking up the bomb. This card is it's powerful, but it's not game breaking. I think it's something that that we can pass for the sake of consistency in our deck. All right, so we got past a Rift, Liberated Primeval. It is a 5-mana 5/5 flying Ward 2. Other dragons you control also have Ward 2, and at the beginning of your end step, if a creature or planeswalker an opponent controlled was dealt excess damage this turn, create a 4/4 red dragon creature with flying. So, for example, if we have Rith and then we play Jaya's Fire NATO on something that has 4 toughness or less, then we're gonna get another dragon. That's pretty powerful, and we're pretty happy that we have access to this Jaya's Fire NATO. So let's just go ahead and pick up the bomb here. We are a little bit lacking in the mana department. We do need a little bit cleaner mana. I think that we have 5 dual lands, which is all right, but realistically, you would want to play as much as you can. Let's just go and pick Gaia's Might. Giora is a rare that cares about artifacts. We don't really care about that, I think. Giora is interesting because it can put Shielded Wall Sentinels into play. So you know what? Let's just go ahead and speculate on Giora. Let's see if that ends up making our deck. We do need to note that this is the end of the draft, getting very close. So pack 3, pick 6. We're only gonna have 8 more picks after this one. And then after that is going to be the deck building portion, and we're gonna see exactly how our entire deck comes together. So 2 cards that are pretty good for us, Vine Wall and Haunted Mire. I'm not sure exactly which one's better for us. Maybe I just take the Vine Wall, because the Vine Wall can find us lands as well, and it's also, once again, a defender for Wingmantle Chaplain. All right. In this pack, we essentially have 2 picks here. It's between Maria's Outrider, 5 mana 4/4 reach, and then enters a battlefield, deals damage to the amount of your domain to your opponent, or Sunbathing Root Walla, which has a buff effect, and it buffs equal to your domain. So I think both these are pretty strong. I do prefer the Outrider here. All right, Leaf Crown Visionary, 2 mana 1/1. Other elves you control get +1/+1. Whenever you cast an elf spell, you may pay 1 if you do draw a card. Okay, so we take a look here. You can actually click here as well, and it'll show you how many elves you have. We have currently 1 elf. I don't think that's very powerful, but for lack of other things, I'm just gonna take it here. All right. So this is actually a pretty good card for a Salvage Mana Worker. 2 mana 1/3, add 1 mana of any color, and we can only activate it once a turn. So this does help us be able to cast some of this greedier stuff that we have at the top end here. And I think that is going to be pretty important. We have a Runvelt Hordemaster that came back. I'm not going to play any of these other cards. Let's just go ahead and take this for our collection. It is a rare after all. Can put it in our sideboard there. All right. What do we have here? We have Beduvian Atrocity that can get back a creature with mana value 3 or less, and we have some stuff to get back. I think that's reasonable. It's more valuable than these other 2. All right. Once again, getting to the end of the pack. We're not really interested in any of these. I don't think we're playing any of these, so shouldn't matter too much. It's gonna pick up Impulse. I don't think we're playing this one as well. And Negate as a very last card in the draft. And now we are going to build our deck. So you could also build your deck during the draft. I think that a lot of players prefer to do that. Now the interesting thing as well is that you can change your deck in best of 1 between games. So say you play your deck and then you don't like one thing about it. Maybe you want to change a land. Maybe you want to add a card from the sideboard to your main deck. You can actually do that in between the games. So that's a pretty nice aspect of the best of 1 format. And I think that we're at a point where we're going to cut both these Stronghold Arenas because our creatures don't attack very well. So let's just go ahead and cut both of these. We have a bunch of defenders, and then our cards that aren't defenders are much later. Tolarian Terror is a card that cares of instant sorceries in our graveyard. So we can go ahead and click here. Click in our deck, and it'll show us the amount of instant sorceries we have. So let's scroll down here. We have 1 instant and 1 sorcery, so this is not going to be particularly playable in our deck, right? We want this card to be discounted, and if it can't be discounted, it's likely too expensive. We do have a lot of creatures, though, so a card like Writhing Necromass. In this cycle of cards, every color has something that gets discounted in one way or another by something. Writhing Necromass cares about the amount of creatures in our yard, so I think that this one's actually a lot more reasonable in our deck. We could also cut it if we don't need it. I don't think it's that exciting, but if we have to play it, we're not going to be too upset about it. So let's go ahead and check out some of the cards that I don't particularly like. Tidepool Turtle, I don't think this does much for us. Our deck is already defensive with a bunch of these defender cards, and I think we're fine to not need a Tidepool Turtle in our deck. And for the same reason, I think this Barkweave Crusher. And List is another keyword that is new to Dominaria United. So as a creature attacks, you may tap a non-attacking creature you control that does not have Summoning Sickness, and then add that creature's power to this one. So, for example, if we had an Outrider out and it wasn't Summoning Sick, meaning it can attack that turn, we can attack with a Barkweave Crusher and list the Outrider, and then our Barkweave Crusher becomes a 6/5 for the turn. But I don't think that this is particularly useful in our deck. And then we are trying to get our deck down to 40 cards here. So 17 lands is going to be the sweet spot in limited for the vast majority of your decks. Now, that will range from 16 lands to 18 lands, depending on your deck. For example, if you are a deck that's a lot lower curved, you might want to run 16 lands. If your deck is higher curved and you need to spend a lot more mana, then you can play 18 lands instead of the traditional 17. And I think that that's going to be a very important thing to keep in mind. But it helps that Magic Arena helps us out with the mana. So, all right. We have this Molten Monstrosity, which I think is fine as well. We have some big creatures, stuff like the Sojourner that comes down relatively early. And then Molten Monstrosity is going to get discounted. All in all, I think that this deck is pretty cool. This is one of the strategies that you can have in a format like this, where mana fixing is like pretty good. We have a lot of lands, for example, and we have ways to fix our mana with Vine Wall. There are other ways to fix as well that we didn't particularly get for this deck, but everything I think makes sense here, and we have a pretty cool concept here. I feel that an intro course to drafting and Magic is incomplete without mentioning the traditional philosophy that is taught to all beginning Magic players. It's represented in the acronym BREAD. So that's BREAD. Now, the B stands for bombs, right? So we have these bombs in our deck that we really are going out of our way to cast. We have, the Rith in our deck. We have Solkanar. We have Tura, which is not that good in our deck since we don't have that many instants and sorceries. Really, a lot of these cards are super powerful, right? Tadiova, that we mentioned before. We picked up Keldon Flame Sage, which can get instant sorceries out of our deck as well, which, again, is not the best in our deck, but I think it's acceptable. So the bombs are going to be valued extremely highly. And then after that, you're going to want removal, right? So removal, we have some removal in the form of Jai's Fire Nado. And then we also have removal, ways to deal with your opponent's creatures in Clockwork Drawbridge. Now, this one's quite expensive. It costs 3 mana to tap a creature. So you're going to have to pay that every single turn if you want something tapped every single turn. But a lot of times it's just a suggestion, right? So this acronym is a suggestion. Then E is going to be for evasion, stuff that has like flying, menace, reach, ways to get through your opponent so that the game doesn't stall out. A stands for aggro, just things that you can attack with, usually in limited, in drafting. Most of the time it comes down to reducing your opponent's life total from 20 to 0. And then the final D in bread stands for duds. So duds are essentially all of the cards that we have in our sideboard here, cards that we're not really interested in playing, cards that we picked up that might have had some sort of potential at one time or another, Tolarian Terror, for example, but ended up not making our 40 card deck. That is the classic acronym for Magic the Gathering Limited Red. I do think that it's a little bit outdated since you can't really replace it for synergistic strategies. So a lot of times, instead of picking a bomb or instead of picking a removal spell, which should be prioritized in the Bread acronym, it's going to be important to actually make a different pick, but that essentially comes with experience. The general takeaway is that powerful cards are good, and you should prioritize those good cards. I hope that this is a reasonable introduction to limited, to drafting specifically in Magic the Gathering. Drafting is a very dynamic format, and I really love how every draft differs from another. The more you play, you start to learn more strategies and stuff as well. Sometimes you can be really aggressive, sometimes you can be really defensive, and the ways that cards interact in draft oftentimes is something that you won't get to see in other formats, because in other formats you're playing essentially with a very fine-tuned deck, right? Decks that are trying to do one very specific thing and trying to do it well. Whereas here we have this really weird deck that has defenders together with 5 colors, together with bombs and not much removal. It is a very dynamic process, and it's something that I've been insanely addicted to for the last decade, and I hope that you enjoy it as well. Thanks for watching. Wow, that was a pile of a deck. I can't believe that deck went 5 wins.